Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I always give till 2 minutes past because it takes a little while for people to trickle in. So you're going to literally joining halfway through a sentence that I'm saying, but I just wanted people to know that we weren't just sitting here in silence. And everybody that knows me knows that that wouldn't really be suitable anyway. Hope you're all well on this Wednesday afternoon. And looking forward to / not looking forward to the budget announcement that's going to be coming later today. So yeah, one more minute and then we will formally start. Okay, 2 minutes past, it's official. So welcome everybody to this webinar. It feels like it's been a while since we've done a webinar. So I'm really pleased that you're giving up your lunch break or early afternoon or whatever you would normally be doing kind of around this time on a Wednesday to join us. For anybody that doesn't know me, my name's Julia. I'm the head of outreach at the Charity Retail Association. I'll be facilitating the webinar this afternoon. Before I hand over to Shopiago and the kind of panel that they've compiled for the webinar, I'll just go through the kind of practical admin bits and pieces. So you'll notice when you logged in that the webinar is being recorded. So a copy will be made available by the end of the week, so you don't have to be frantically making any notes. And if you're watching this back and you weren't able to join us live, you'll still be able to share it with your team and keep watching it back for loads of extra information. I can see that somebody has used the kind of put their hand up function. If you want to message my colleague Kelly, or Kelly will message you directly. So if anybody's having any tech issues or admin problems or things that they're not sure about, then our administrator Kelly is in there. So just search for her in the participant list and you should be able to message her directly and she'll be able to sort you out with any issues. And we do want you to participate with us. So this is in the kind of webinar format. So if you want to participate, then there's a Q&A box at the bottom. So if you're not sure about that, if you go to the bottom of the Zoom screen, it should say Q&A. There's the ability to type a question and submit it. There's also the ability for you to see questions that other people have submitted and then vote for the one that you really like the look of or that's similar to a question you were going to ask. So have a look there, upvote them. We will do as much Q&A as we've got time for at the end. So I'll have a look at those and start with the most popular question and just work my way down. There's also a little chat function if you need to talk to any of us or the panelists. So please do that as well. Okay, I think I've done all the kind of very practical bits and pieces. So that's enough from me. Time to hand over and introduce the webinar. So I'm really delighted to hand over to Emma Hunt, who's the head of new business from one of our long-standing corporate members, Shopiago. And she'll be leading the panel on the webinar, which is Surplus Goods Chaos, Turning Pence into Pounds, which is very apt on a day that the budget is being announced. So Emma, no pressure. Over to you and how you're going to be making all this money for us all.
Hi. Bit of background noise. Oh, there we go. That's gone. Hello, and lovely to be here today. I'm just trying to get my view to change because when you presented, Christina, it jumped around. There we go. Thank you for joining today. Really appreciate everyone's time being here. As Julia mentioned, this webinar today is all about your surplus goods and how we can get a bit more money out of those. So I just wanted to start off by touching on what we mean by surplus goods, because I know that this can mean something slightly different to everyone. So Your surplus goods is simply going to be your waste products, things that you don't sell in your shops. So something you might otherwise call rag, waste, surplus goods, lots of different turns of phrase, but we're all going to be talking about the same thing. And we're going to be having a great panel discussion with 3 panelists today. So I would like to give a lovely warm welcome to Dawn, who is our sustainability consultant, Karen from Compton Care, who is the stock and partnership manager over there, and then Julie from Willowbrook Hospice, who is the head of retail. So we've got a great panel today, and we're going to be running through lots of questions, diving into the latest trends in the market, which will hopefully give you some really good insight into what you could potentially be doing there too. So please feel free to ask questions as you go along. As Julia mentioned, pop them into the functionality at the bottom. But without further ado, we'll jump straight into the panel and start to hear from the people on the call who are really going to give us the juicy insight. So I think I'm going to start off by asking a question to Karen and Julie, which I hopefully are going to be able to give us a bit of detail on. So starting off, how are fluctuating recycling index prices affecting the profitability of unsellable shop goods? And what proactive measures can charities like yourselves take to stay ahead of these changes?
So Emma, obviously the drop in the rag price that we've all experienced over the last sort of 2 years really, it's massively impacted the profitability of all the charities. It's something that's not going to go away, so we have got to be proactive. We have got to think outside the box. So hence why Willowbrook Hospice are a fairly new customer with Shopiago. That was part of our thinking outside the box. What can we do? And I think for the smaller charities, sometimes there may be a misconception that Shopiago is only for the national charities, which absolutely not. You know, it's been fantastic for us to clear surplus stock. We've also done some things around the textiles in terms of having pound rails, running clearance events where people can come and fill a bag for £10 to help us clear that stock rather than it go to rag. And in terms of Shopiago, since we've started trading, which was about August time, we've took quite a substantial figure, and it's probably at least 50% more than what we would have taken in the shops on books, CDs and DVDs. So it's been fantastic for us in sort of a different platform to clear through excess stock.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Karen, how about yourself? Have you been doing anything similar over at Compton Care?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing as far as textiles concerned. Things like kilo sales in, pop-up locations. Shopiago's been really good for us because, as we know, I don't know whether it's the same for everybody, but DVDs, CDs, games, our reg company don't pay us anything for. So that's a clear profit for us. And books as well, we've doubled in the last couple of months with getting all the stores on board as well. So we're hoping just to keep pushing that forward. So we've seen a 53% increase on profit from that since August as well.
That's amazing. There's such great numbers from the both of you, and I know that we'll go on to some of the more of your experience with the product a bit later on, but I've seen some great results from both of you. But interesting with the textile side of things as well, and those ideas around bulking things up together, trying to get rid of those items in bulk to customers for even a small amount is going to make a difference to the recycling prices that you might get for those items now. So Dawn, I think it'll be a good one to ask you about, with your knowledge on the market actually, in terms of the forecast for when recycling index prices might stabilise, and do you have any ideas what this looks like and what charities should be doing in the meantime to maintain financial stability?
Hi Emma, thanks for inviting me. I think we need to be quite honest with ourselves right now. There's stability is actually where we sit right now. It isn't a fundraising opportunity anymore. The best you can get from rag recycling, and that's from your reuse merchant, is actually to support them, but also actually to sit still. And by doing that, taking it that as long as you are still getting a sustainable collection, the best you can achieve now will actually be getting a collection so you're not having to pay for rags to be collected. The more this situation changes, and unfortunately, where kilo sales are great and they're a revenue stream for charities, they do actually damage the recycling merchants. You know, from a recycling point of view, ultra fast fashion is the main reason we are where we've ended up, and the charities will have wholeheartedly felt that. You know, when you can buy something new cheaper than you can buy in a charity shop, it really affects every single one of us that's on this webinar today. But it is really important that we're looking at how this is happening. And as a global market, the reuse and recycling of textiles, there has been a massive change and shift in the last 6 months, probably the last 2 years, to be honest. Brexit made it worse because it increased people's view on buying online, which is great for people, for Shopiago customers. You buy more stuff online, but it's actually encouraging people to buy cheap brands online rather than reuse. If they were all buying reuse, we'd all be smiling, everybody would be happy because the quality would be great. But they're buying cheap brands, and those brands are really affecting the quality of the material, and that quality of material is what's actually driven the textiles markets down. So it's nothing to do with, well, unfortunately, the increase in costs in labour charges, shipping costs, fuel costs, electric bills, they haven't helped. But we're being brutally honest. If we go back 15 years, the quality of the clothing that you would have been seeing through the shops was so much more, would have been so much better. It's got a sustainable process. People will have kept it in their wardrobe for 2, 3, 4, in my case, a lot more years. However, now that's not the culture. It's a throwaway culture. At the end of each year, people don't pack up their winter clothes and pull out their summer clothes from the previous year. They just get rid of them and start again, if they haven't already done that 2 or 3 times through the season. And that's where the issue is, because it's so cheap to buy new clothes. Actually, it causes the turnover of clothes to be high, but buying clothes cheap is really damaging to the actual quality. So when it comes back to that, when's the index price going to stabilize? It's as stable as it's going to get. And reality is, I think we need to be preparing ourselves that in the next year it's going to hit a point where you don't get paid for your rag. But as long as it's still being collected and you're supporting the people that are collecting it, hopefully they can stand the test of time until actual recycling of clothing, which is still a non-entity. There's no such proper thing for recycling clothing. There's mechanical recycling back into something else, but not into clothing yet, not in any scalable fashion. So until that comes, which is another 5-10 years minimum down the line, the best we can hope for is that people are still collecting this and that they can still survive by what little amount of reuse is now coming through in the rag.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point that you make there, actually, Dawn, around the increasing costs and some of those changes with the clothing. So from a charity standpoint, how can charities support the movement of non-sellable items to these reuse merchants whilst minimising their expenses?
I think everybody who's on this call will have seen, you know, their merchant would have been coming and speaking to them about what can go in their rag, what can't go in their rag. You know, at the end of the day, rag merchants that are out there now are actually reuse merchants. They make their money by actually taking the clothing and being able to sell on the goods that can be worn again into reuse markets around the world. That's how they fund the collection and the sorting of those clothings. With there being less and less in there, they're now fighting the battle of how they can afford to drive around the country and pick it up. So I think from a sustainability point of view, using local collectors is a far better solution than having somebody that drives a long distance from you to collect the goods. If they've got a local base, doesn't mean to say it can't be a national collector, but have they got a local base? And, you know, if you can support them by working with them on how you prepare the goods, you know, it's really fundamental. And I don't know how much I can stress this. Little things like making sure pairs of shoes go in the same bag when they're going to a rag merchant, not just one into that bag and one into the next bag, because then they get lost. Or making sure that if you've got an item of clothing that is completely covered in an oil-based paint or oil, it doesn't even go into those bags because it contaminates it, is fundamental. But there still needs to be more support. And merchants are looking at solutions out there. You know, the CRA are very rightly doing a tiger team at the moment, looking at solutions on how to help. But I think it is really important that you're working with somebody to actually work with that merchant and help them deliver those requirements in the most sustainable way for your shops. Because I know reality, back of any retail charity shop, it's a bit like a toilet in size. It's tiny, you've got no space, you can't do multiple bag sorting, but whatever you can do to support the merchant to make it as efficient for them but still practical for you is the best you can do.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds small, right? Putting two shoes in the same bag, but the impact can actually be huge for those reuse merchants. So actually thinking about that point, because that's something that the charity is actually having to think about and do and build into their operations. With all of these shifts in trends and demands for textiles and recyclables, influencing the local charity operations, what adjustments should the charities start to consider more?
I think the charities need to start considering being, you know, education of the donors. Okay, that we don't ever want to stop a donor bringing stuff in. That's fundamental. We really want the donors to bring stuff in, but making sure they understand what's needed, making sure the communication about what's accepted and what's not. You know, if you've got a small retailer shop, simple things, don't bring furniture to a small standard retail shop. Make sure people understand that, because you as a charity have got to dispose of that somehow, and that will affect the bottom lines. So communication is fundamental. I think if we can manage how the communication works with your merchant, and no merchant you know who's worth their salt should be ignoring you. If you can't pick up the phone and get through to somebody within, yeah, obviously they might be on the phone, but if you can take another call and move away from them, you know, and move things, get to them easily to get your communication going and understanding what they need, that's fundamental. And it will be as simple as that bit of communication. How can you help each other? Because they want to help you. At the end of the day, you know, you're there to make money for your charities and the great causes you work for. Those merchants aren't all horrible, nasty people. They do want to work with you to actually make sure you're still getting a revenue, but their priorities have to change. Their priorities have changed to, can they still employ these drivers and pay them a reasonable wage? Because the minimum wage is low, but is high, but actually it's still quite low in the global scheme of things. They need to be paying somebody, you know, a reasonable amount of money. So adjustments need to be mutually agreeable. That's the most important thing. Communication is the key. And if you've got a problem, make sure they're speaking to you. And if not, reach out, ask for help from other sectors. The CRA will be great at helping build bridges if you're struggling with your merchant. That's what I do now all the time. And it's one of those situations where we've got to be keeping those communication lines. So that is fundamentally the number one thing for me, communication and coming up with a solution that works for you both.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. There's nothing worse than miscommunication, right? When so many things go wrong. But we've spoken a lot there about the reuse merchants and how we can particularly work with them better, because we know that's what a lot of charities will be doing at the minute with a lot of their textiles and the other recyclables that they have. But do you see any emerging opportunities which can support charities to potentially offset some of the decline in pricing that they're seeing?
Absolutely, and it's something that I'm working with 3 or 4 charities on right now. When you're looking at the global stock that you're dealing with, and we're talking about what you're not able to sell in your shops, you need to be looking at what operational solutions are out there, reviewing all your solutions. What options have you got? You know, have you got a solution where you can sell as much as you can online, if that's working for you? Have you looked at your waste management? Are you just using general bins, which are costing you a lot more money? Could you be using recycling bins? You know, can you make sure that you're working in balance? So as where you might have to stop bulk sending, Shopiago is one of the classic examples. You end up stop sending your bulk of books to somewhere because they've lost their value because you've sold everything, but you're making more money out of Shopiago, which will offset you using a recycling solution locally, which has got a lower carbon emission, a lower problem for your stores. It just happens and you don't even have to be involved with it. That combination of 2 things is really easy to manage. So there is opportunities out there, but you need to be able to optimize those. And it's really difficult for smaller charities to be able to do that because your restraints on time are so massive, which is where I'm not selling my services, but this is where consultants come in. We've done this. We know how the solutions work. This is what I do day to day now for so many charities. It's about understanding and saying, look, this is the best solution that's going to fit your whole ethos. And, you know, if you're working with somebody, and share experiences between the charities. Once one of you's cracked it, work out the best way to do it, pass that message on, you know, looking at all solutions for everything, working out exactly what your rag man can take, because that becomes a solution, working out what you can sell online and still achieve an optimum value for, that's a solution. But it can't be one solution. You've got to build a solution that's got multiple streams to work for your charity, and that's the best thing you can do. And there's so much support out there for the charities if they ask in the right direction.
Amazing, thanks, Dawn. So I think from that we're hearing that there's definitely lots of opportunity out there, and there's the opportunity to diversify in maybe some spaces that potentially not everybody on this webinar today may have thought about. And quite interestingly, there you spoke about how you could potentially make a bit more profit from one area, but then offset those costs in a more sustainable and environmentally friendly way, which is, you know, we're not always just thinking about profit, right? We do have to think about that balance that we're looking to strike with the sustainability quotas that we're looking to hit across the charity segment. So thank you, Dawn. That was really, really useful. I think it would be a good idea to hand back over to Karen potentially now, if I could come to you first. It'd be great to hear on that topic around environmental and sustainable practices, how you look to strike the balance between ensuring profitability and getting things sustainably friendly, especially when the recycling index prices are low.
Yeah, I mean, as Dawn was saying about your waste management, we've now turned to recycling bins at our stores. So you've got, for books, you've got the 3 options. You've got the recycling bin, you've got the Shopiago, and the rag merchant still. So we've got the 3 options for that, as well as obviously selling in store.
Great. So there you go. You've completely diversified that up, right? So there's multiple opportunities for that surplus stock to go somewhere that's hopefully going to be the best profitable and environmentally friendly place. And Julie, how about yourself?
I think firstly, as Dawn said, it's really important that you have that close relationship with the rag merchants, and you can have that open, honest, transparent conversation with them. To have a robust stock rotation process amongst your stores is really key. And then things like using clearance shops and clearance events to sell through excess on the textiles. And then I think one of the key things that we need to consider is how we're pricing stock at the moment. You know, so because we have got this excess stock, whether it be on books, on textiles, that we are pricing accordingly. So if we know one of our stores is overstocked on a particular category, then they have to price down until they bring that back in line. You know, and I think you've got to have a really agile pricing model at the moment.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually, because I think what you're talking about there is all those steps before you kind of get to the point of having surplus goods, and
Yeah.
maybe making some of those processes a bit more efficient and thinking about rotating that stock, like you say, and having those different sales that you have could all maybe mean that when you get to that surplus stock, it's not as much and you don't have to.
Yeah, you're just
have so
trying
much
to reduce what goes into surplus, because, you know, we're all in a challenging position at the moment with surplus stock. So it's just trying to minimise that, really.
That's a really, really great point. And hopefully that gives lots of people some things to think about prior to getting to this point as well. So this is a bit of an open question, really, to anybody that would like to take it first. But what role do you think that innovation plays in adapting to market changes whilst maintaining, again, both the sustainability goals and the financial viability?
Shall I kick us off on this one?
Yes,
I think innovation and technology is going to become fundamental. You know, in this day and age, we are getting to the point where most of the generations throughout are computer savvy to the basic levels, unless it's my husband, that is. However, there becomes a point where, you know, innovation becomes easy. People are able to utilize scanning a barcode so easily from a mobile phone, from a computer with a handheld gun, but even from a mobile phone, to just make those simple decisions. How's the best way to deal with this item? And as long as they've got a reasonable internet connection, which sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, but it is getting better across the UK, slowly but surely, thanks to BT and Openreach. But if, you know, at this stage, simple things like a modern Android mobile phone can make solutions so much easier. You know, if you're looking at some of these barcoding solutions like the Trade-in or the Shopiago, for them to be able to just scan it and just instantly have an answer and a solution makes life so easy, you know. And it's one of those things where if it's easy, the volunteer that's doing it doesn't need to be overly skilled. They don't need to have a master's degree in technology and IT. They can do something, and that means you can open it out. You can actually take advantage of technology to actually make things easier in your shops. As well with your volunteers, they need to be sometimes customer focused. They need to be able to work, you know, you could utilize somebody who's got something that struggles with those things to do some of the technology side of things, because 90% of people that are, you know, let's be honest, got learning difficulty or struggle socially, anything along those lines, most of them can use a mobile phone, and they can then do solutions to help you. And that can be taking pictures of bric-a-brac to sell on Shopiago, taking pictures of clothes. All of this innovation with mobile phones, technology, websites, selling apps, all of the things that actually I'm probably not particularly great at, but all of those things make us, so it's so much easier to sell sell outwards for you as charities, that you can utilize more technology to help get those essential funds in. And even down to you know, I saw it recently on one particular chain. They've got a section on their website where they've actually got all of the pictures of furniture through all of their stores on a one page, so people can then pick it from there and drive to the store and pick it up. And that's just utilizing technology and innovation. But as we move more into technology and innovation with textiles, this is where the fun game becomes, because it's not there. Textiles cannot, innovation in textiles right now cannot tell me if an item is reusable or not. It's coming. And actually, I saw some amazing tech only a couple of weeks ago that thinks it can do it. It's not quite there yet, using AI, but AI will help in the long run, which will then help stores, help merchants with what stock can go. And again, it can come down to that camera picture. So I think it's something that we need to embrace. We need to embrace technology. We need to embrace changing things up and making sure that we're not still old school. And, you know, basic things like, why have we still got shops recording their sales in a book, with a book and a pen, and it's not on a spreadsheet that can give analysis and data straight away. Those are the types of things where innovation, technology are going to help us loads, because it reduces manpower or changes the manpower, which is probably a better way. So you're not reliant on skill.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think especially the use of AI, there's so much opportunity to come in the future. But Karen, Julie, is there anything from the charity perspective that you're seeing it from an innovation standpoint?
I think if I can echo what Dawn's just said, particularly the Shopiago trading that we've recently started working with you guys, we've got volunteers who maybe don't want to go out onto the shop floor, or they're not comfortable, and that they can do something in the back. So scanning the books for Shopiago, that gives them that real sense of purpose, and it's great that they can see instantly how much money that they're making for the charity. And you know, we report the figures to the shops each week on how they're doing, in terms of, you know, compiling a league table, etc. And I think if you can give them that granular information in terms of, you know, what we've made so far will pay for X days care in the hospice, it really hits home. So yes, we're using technology and innovation to raise more funds for the hospice, but keeping it really close in terms of what that means in terms of, you know, it'll pay for care for how many days, brings it back to the volunteers, and, you know, it does create that healthy competition.
That's such a lovely way to look at it, actually, and such a sometimes a forgotten benefit of things, right? When you're so focused on the profitability and sustainability side of things, but actually you need to get those volunteers into the shops to support you. And if this is a great way to do that by enabling them to see exactly what they're giving the charity through the time that they're giving you, then how fantastic that you're able to do that. And Karen, how about at Compton Care? Is there anything from your side on innovation?
Yeah, I mean, all our stores have got tablets, Android tablets in stores as well. So some stores will scan from the PC, other stores will use the adapter and use the tablet. So if they are loan trading, they can still do that while they're at the till if it's quiet. And another thing that really helps is the incentives from Shopiago. So if they work really well as a team, and you know, they get vouchers, and that really spurs them on as well. And if the other stores can see that, or this team's got £10 voucher and they've all just got donuts from Greg's, you know, it really brings it on.
That's so great to hear. Yeah, well, I'll talk more about Shopiago a bit later, but it's great to hear some of the incentives and the games that we're putting into place to help that competition amongst stores is really having a good impact. So maybe innovation doesn't always have to be in the form of technology, but sometimes it's ideas and creativeness that helps the people who are actually getting involved and using that technology to be more bought into that journey. Dawn, coming back to you, are there any upcoming regulations or policies that could further impact the rag market? And how can charities prepare to comply while maintaining financial stability?
We are hopeful, is the answer. We are really, really hopeful. Getting the government to move on anything in this area right now is really difficult. We are pushing for a regulatory body, and we're hoping that's going to come through soon. And once that's through, we will be asking the charity sector to just really look at that and only make sure they're dealing with people that have registered, with an enhancement to make sure that they're genuine, proper businesses, because it will make a difference. We need to see these figures, and I think moving forwards, the figure of the amount of stock that's being diverted from waste is going to be really fundamental for the government to actually start paying attention. So hopefully within the next year, this sort of information, the number of items you're selling through your store, will be really important to people like WRAP, so that they can actually see how much is being diverted to get textiles back on the market, the brainchild. Because it's some useless fact for you, 3% of the total waste in the UK is textiles. So it's nothing, it's really, really minimal. However, it has the highest pollution rate at the creation and disposal of all the other waste streams put together. Useless information, I know, but I'm full of that stuff.
Useless but very interesting information, because it's amazing how much of a bad impact such a small percentage can have. But Karen, from your side, is there any government initiatives or funding opportunities that exist for charities to leverage to offset rising operational costs in managing your surplus goods?
No, not at the moment, not that we know of. So if anybody does know any, let me know. No.
Julie, have you heard of anything from your side?
No, so exactly the same as Karen. If there's someone out there that knows of something, please share it with all of us.
Yeah, if anyone's got anything, please do pop that in the Q&A box, because I'm sure everyone would love to hear it. But hopefully we start to see more things from the government over the next few years as some of these changes with regulations may come around. Dawn, back to you. Is there any solutions to help charities manage these challenges that we're speaking about today?
The only solution base is to actually do these fundamental reviews, look at what's happening out there, and actually start taking it on as a proper, waste tends to get forgotten about with so many charities, because it just happens in the background, but it costs you so much money. So you need to be looking at solutions every which way and working with partners that are specialists in it, who can share the knowledge. And as new things come up, keep reviewing it. As things change, keep reviewing, because that's going to be the best way that in the future we might get back to a point where rag is worth nothing, but it's going back into the proper waste solution, which will give you marketing solutions, because all of these marketing things to saying you're doing great recycling work actually is monetary value to you, because it makes your donors feel valued for what they're actually putting towards you, because we never want a donor to think that their stuff is just being given to you and going in the bin, because that's the worst thing. So that's why making sure you've not just got general bins is so important, because that donor perception is massive for you, because it keeps them coming back and pay and giving you money in whatever form it might be.
Yeah, definitely. And that's how World of Books came to life, was from seeing that stock be put into the bin. So it definitely has an impact on those that see it, that make those donations, because they really care about the cause that they're supporting. So whilst there's no kind of obvious real go-to one solution, it sounds like there is a lot of work to be done in really looking at that market and trying to gather as much data as you can. And by being part of this webinar today, that's probably your first step in doing that, and starting to hear some of this information and go away and think about it, and hopefully see the right people you can get in touch with to talk about it a bit more.
Can I just add, Emma, there isn't a one fit solution that fits every charity. Every single charity will have a slightly different niche issue. I never thought in my life I'd be dealing with medical waste. I now know what to do with medical waste as a result of me working with charities. So yeah, literally, you've got to tap into every different solution and build up what works specifically for your charities.
Yeah, of course. Definitely, a very good point there. So whilst we can all learn from one another, I think there's always going to be those different intricacies that we'll have to consider for our own setups and our own charity issues. So I'd love to jump back to Karen and Julie, because I know that you've spoken a bit about Shopiago trading today, and how it's benefited you already. So I would love to understand a bit more about how trading addresses concerns related to the fluctuating value of your excess books in such a volatile market.
So Anna, if I look at the average price per unit we were getting on books in the shops, some of our shops were selling paperbacks for £4 so you're looking at 25 pence per unit. On average now from Shopiago, we're getting 53 pence per unit. And that's been great to be able to have that conversation with the managers and with the volunteers to prove to them that it's a really good way of us dealing with excess stock. And then obviously it goes to Shopiago and then it gets a further home from there. I think the platform that they use is really easy. And obviously, when you've got a volunteer scanning books, if they find a book that's like quite high in value, it's like they've won the lottery. You know, they run around the shop, they're telling everybody. So in terms of a profitability point of view and clearing excess stock, you know, we have had, obviously, you scan thousands of items and they don't all get accepted. But the bigger picture is how much are you getting per unit on the items that do get accepted.
Yeah, definitely. And Karen, how about yourself over at Compton Care?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I mean, you know, everything goes on the shelf to start with, especially if it's been gift aided. So, you know, it's priority to get that on the shelf and get that sold really as priority. Then all our takeoffs are all scanned. And yeah, the accept rate, you know, it's quite high in comparison to just sending it on to another store or, you know, putting it through the rag merchant. So yeah, and stores, like I say, they're looking at who's doing what, and it's pushing them to do a bit more. They're all getting quite competitive and all want to beat each other. Yeah, and because the basket can be left open as well, so it doesn't take that much time. It's not like you're spending hours on end. If somebody's in at 8:30 in the morning, they can just scan a few books and leave that basket open in a box under the desk and then just keep coming back to it until they've got their amount to send off. So it's not taking up huge amounts of time during the day. And, you know, that they were a lot more open to it than I thought they were going to be. And they're all getting on with it a lot easier than I thought they would as well. So yeah, it's positives all round for us.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And I think in the background, just so everyone's context, you can see the trade-in platform in action. If somebody was to be scanning their booking, getting their item accepted, and it gets added to their basket, then they go through to the checkout process and they can just select their collection date for DPD to come and take that box straight out of your way. So it's going to free up that space for you as well, as being something that you can use to manage across multiple shops with the view that you have from an admin standpoint to see the performance of each of those shops, and therefore can create that competitive environment if you need to. But you've just mentioned there around how easy it's been for users to use, and also there was a previous mention around some of the incentives and the gamification that we provide to help engagement. But if there's anybody on this call that's thinking about implementing Shopiago trading as a scanning solution, how easy is it to do? Is it something that you say that anyone can kind of set up and get going with?
For us, it's been quite straightforward to set it up. We've had fantastic support from our account manager, Melissa. She came on and she's done a couple of training sessions over Teams with the managers to introduce the platform, show them how easy it is to get scanning. The scanners arrived really quickly. We had one shop that had an issue with the scanner. It was replaced 2 days later. So we found Melissa to be really responsive if we've got any issues. So it has been easy to set up. We have had some challenges, but there have been internal challenges, which I'm sure every charity will face. So we've had some volunteers who've not wanted to scan. They don't want to make money for another company. And that's about that education piece, isn't it? To really educate them in terms of, look, you know, at the moment we're getting 25 pence per unit. This is what we can earn if we are scanning through Shopiago. It's helping us to deal with the excess stock. So that really is about education and embedding what Shopiago means to the charity.
Amazing. Yeah. And Karen, how about yourself?
Yeah, no, Melissa's again been really supportive with us. We have manager and assistant manager bi-monthly. So I just did you know, a half-hour session, took some books along, showed them how to scan it. And yeah, everybody's picked it up really easily. Haven't really had any issues, just the odd missed collection from DPD, but that's easily sorted out just on the web chat. So yeah, I haven't had any issues from stores really. Nobody's pushed back. It's just more about getting the momentum going a bit more now. But yeah, no issues at all.
Amazing. And I think, you know, in terms of the financial advantages you both mentioned earlier, sort of 50% plus increase in revenue that might have seen before. Julie, you're making a really good point there about thinking about things in terms of your per unit revenue that you would have previously received, and not just from the price per unit that you're getting, but also those incentives that you both touched on earlier, that we as a product provide you with as a tool, because we're built for charities and we're built to support you to drive the most revenue that you possibly can by creating these games and these competitions and incentives that you can get bought into. It hopefully gives you a tool to help motivate your stores and help get those volunteers brought into the journey of that reuse and the recycle, and doing the most they can for both the environment and also for your charity at the same time. So were there any kind of closing remarks that any of you wanted to give on that before we wrap up and look at moving on to the final part of the webinar?
I think for Willowbrook, we've launched really successfully, and we've had some great results initially. Our challenge is now going to be, how do we keep that momentum up and that enthusiasm? So that's, you know, something that Alison and I will need to work together with the stores to just keep that enthusiasm going, because actually in the first couple of months of trading, the shops have proved what they can do.
Yeah, very good point. And hopefully we can support you in that with some of the things that we have coming up, especially with our exciting Christmas campaign that hopefully you'll start to see more about very soon. Karen, anything final from you before we look at closing out the panel?
No, just to say that it's all been really positive. You know, we've got no negatives. Everybody's getting behind it. Like you say, it's just a matter of keeping that momentum going. And, you know, if anybody's looking at this, then just to give it a go. There's nothing to lose.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a very, very good way to look at it. There definitely is not completely free to use. So, you know, all you're going to get is a nice hand scanner out of it at the end of the day, if it's something that you don't continue to move forward with. And Dawn, finally, anything from you before we close the panel and move on to our final remarks?
No, I think it's just, now is the time for every charity to just re-look and go back and think, how can we resolve some of these issues? Because waste used to be a money spinner for charities, is now not going to be a money spinner, it's going to be a cost. So we've got to make sure we're being as practical and as smart as possible and keeping up with the latest trends. And Shopiago is obviously one of those trends. I didn't get connected to this. Emma gave me a login so I could just log in and play on their demo test center. I didn't have any instruction whatsoever, and I worked it out in about 10 minutes. So that's how easy this solution is, just because I just went and played, and that was purely all it was. So it is definitely a solution to look at.
Amazing. Well, I want to say a massive thank you again to Dawn, Karen and Julie for all joining today. I think there's been some really, really useful discussion, whilst some of it doesn't necessarily seem too rosy in terms of the way that things are looking with the recycling index prices and some of the direction that costs are going in within the market. There's lots of innovation happening and there's lots of change coming around. So sounds like there's lots of opportunity for charities out there to be getting more from that surplus stock and potentially seeing more sustainable practices as well off the back of that. So hopefully it's given people lots to think about today. And if there are any questions for anyone on the panel, then please do reach out to us specifically. But I will hand back to Julia to talk about the Q&A questions that hopefully you've been gathering in the chat whilst we'll be having that great discussion.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, we've had quite a few questions through. Really, really great session. Lots of information. I think people will kind of go back and listen again to kind of pick up the tips, you know, from the panel members as to things that maybe they're going to go away and research what's going on in their own retail operation. You know, are we using the recycling bins? Do we need to go back and look at every kind of waste stream, as Dawn was suggesting? You know, how do we try and map that all into one place to then look at, you know, what solutions might work or not work for us? So I think some really, really great tips. There's some kind of practical bits and bobs that, Emma, you might be able to answer in a minute about Shopiago that kind of keep cropping up. But I'm going to ask the other panelists some of the questions first, if you don't mind. Dawn, you might have seen one of the questions that comes through, and obviously we don't want this to be super negative, but Gary has said, you know, as much as the government are outlining their budget today, lots of our charity members, it's that time of year where budgeting ready for 25-26 is coming around. Do you have any sense kind of what people should be thinking about for their kind of RAG income line?
I would love to say that you're going to have loads of money, but you need to be realistic. Solutions like Shopiago is where you can get your budget from as potential ways of getting money for your RAG, but for your clothing, I think we need to be honest. It's better to put it at 0 and end up exceeding that because you've managed to get money, and being honest about that for next April, because you know we've got Christmas coming up. It always takes a further dip over Christmas. So honestly, I said to charities this time last year, put it at 10p for this year, because that's where I felt it was going to be. I think honestly by December we could be at the 10p mark across the board. I would say from April go to 0, because anything above 0 is a Brucey bonus. Okay, right. Okay, let's move away from that on to slightly more positive things. Definitely. But it's really useful that people need to kind of be realistic about what the future looks like. Karen and Julie, I've had a question that you might be able to answer, please. Somebody is specifically asking about children's books. Do you have a lot of children's books that you're putting through Shopiago? Do you find that they sell okay?
Willowbrook, I don't think we put many children's books through Shopiago. We do sell children's books really well in the shops. Okay. So no, we don't put many through on Shopiago at all. Better
selling through the shop. What about you, Karen?
It's a mix. It just depends, really. We do sell quite a lot of children's books through the shops, but we do scan our takeoffs. And I don't think the rejection rate's any different to other books.
Okay, that's really good to hear. Okay, Emma, there's lots of you've probably pulled up the Q&A and saw, and there's loads of really kind of practical bits and bobs that you might be able to answer. It might not be appropriate to answer here. So I'm going to try and lump some of them together just because I think people are still a bit unclear about some bits and pieces. So you might be able to explain it for them. So there's the whole Ziffit versus Shopiago versus World of Books. It sounds like a wrestling tag team competition. So any kind of unpicking of that would be really useful. And then a couple of people have talked about, yellow crates. Do you only collect what has a value when it's scanned? Do you collect weekly or do they book it in? I'm not going to be asking questions about cost, but could you just give us a kind of overview of some of those kind of basic principles? I think would be really useful for people that perhaps have heard of Shopiago, but they're just not really familiar with how you kind of operate.
Yes, of course. So World of Books is our e-commerce website where we sell books to consumers like you and I. And in order for us to sell those books on the World of Books website, we collect those books through the likes of trade-in from charities and Ziffit from consumers. So that's the main difference between Ziffit and trade-in, is that Ziffit is a consumer-facing product, whereas trade-in is a business-focused product. So it's built specifically for you as a charity. There's a number of things that make it more beneficial than using Ziffit. So for example, if you've got multiple shops, you can track the activity of all those shops in one place. As I'm sure Julie and Karen, you look at those elements, so you can see how well those shops are performing, you can report on that, and you can have all of that in a really accessible format. We also have the incentive schemes that we talked about earlier. So we have the specific games that are set up just for our charities to work participate in and to win amazing prizes, which is just a real great added benefit to give you something back that otherwise you're probably not going to get, and your volunteers are probably not going to get either. So I think that's such a nice thing for us to be able to give you as charity. And also the collection side of things. So it's not a weekly connection. You book that collection through DPD as soon as you check out. So once you hit that minimum basket value of £20, you're able to go through, check out your basket, and then book that pickup in. So you can get rid of that stock super quickly from your back room. So if you're not someone who has a lot of space, you can free up that space a lot quicker with that DPD collection, which would typically be within a 24 to 48 hour window that we could get that picked up from you. We only collect the accepted scans. So when you're scanning those books in, if you're getting those rejects, they still need to go into your waste or your rag, whichever place they're going to go. Maybe you've got those recycling bins, as we spoke about earlier. And then you will be paid on those items that we have accepted. There is a quality process where we need to make sure that all the books don't have rips in, you know, they're not water damaged, that sort of thing. So if you've got a big tear across the front of your book, unfortunately that wouldn't be accepted. But we can definitely speak more in detail about any of the questions that anyone has about Shopiago trading specifically, and go into more of a detailed demo as well. I think it was really great today to dive more into the questions that we were discussing, because it was such a great discussion from everyone. So if anyone wants to do that, then please just reach out to me and we can set that up.
Fabulous. Thank you. That's made it much clearer. You know, parent company, customer focused option for kind of you and I sitting at home, and then the charity option, which is where the Shopiago trade-in option is coming in, and all of the benefits that you've talked about. So that is fabulous.
Yes.
Natalie has asked about the per unit that Julie mentioned. That just means per book. So when Julie was saying, you know, like it's like kind of 4 books for £1, which means that per book or per unit, I think was the phrase Julie used, means that each of those books in the shop was selling for 25p. Whereas when you were scanning them, Julie, I think you said it was an average of 53p. So unit, book, those terms in that context were interchangeable, just in case anybody else like Natalie wasn't entirely sure what that meant. I am conscious it is 57. And I think what I will probably do, Stephanie's put a comment about textile recycles burning into energy. It would be really useful if you could drop either Kelly or I or something an email about this afterwards, because that's kind of another discussion that I think would be useful to pick up as a kind of alternative option. Dawn, have you heard of something like
this? We need
this?
to be careful with that, because yes, it is a solution that's out there and it's something that we need to use right now, because at least we're doing something with it. But the carbon emissions that come from those clothing being burn is actually really toxic, and it can, because of the plastics that are in so many clothing now, it is something that is not a long-term solution. It is a short-term solution, and they will charge you for it, although they're making money off the back of it.
Yeah, so that was my kind of first thing.
It is a solution, but they'll charge you for it. But it's a negative environment solution, but it's one of the only solutions at the moment. But we're hoping to come out with the other side of it. So it's a if you need to, it is a solution now, but it's not one that comes recommended from environmental people, put it that way, and not from me, because I want everything properly recycled.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and that was kind of the first thought that I had as well, that, you know, but burning things often, the emissions from that are really not great. Okay, it is 58. So apologies for anybody whose question I haven't been able to answer. There may well be some things that you would like to speak to Emma directly with, and fabulously, she's got her contact details up on the screen. So I know there were some questions about, you know, does it cost to have scanners? What's the average price? It's not appropriate for things like that to be discussed in this type of a place. Every charity will have a slightly different setup. So please do reach out to Emma directly, and she or somebody in her team will be able to pick up that conversation with you to start talking about what might work for you. Can you have a little look at the system? What are the kind of profit margins that you might be seeing, etc., etc. So please do go directly to Emma about that. So thank you everybody for giving up your time and giving up an hour of your lunch or whatever to join us. I hope you found that really useful. I certainly did. I will have a double check through any of the questions that didn't get through, and if there is anything else particularly relevant, I will ask Emma and see if she can kind of, or someone at Shopiago can come back with a response that we can then share when we send a copy of the recording out. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Everybody's going to frantically hang up and go and see what's happening with the budget now. I can guarantee it. So it's ticking around to 1 o'clock already. So everybody close down, quickly open up like BBC News or something, see what's happening with the government's budget. Everybody keep your fingers crossed, depending what your own personal preferences are, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Julie. Have a lovely afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.